About the other big star the UFC has before we talk about PFL, and that's Ilia Topuria. So fascinating, man. He's about to fight Charles Oliveira. You obviously one of the best breakdowns in the sport. I want to get your perspective. Are people underestimating Charles Oliveira a little too much going into this fight? I'm getting kind of shades of the Kamaru Usman Joaquin Buckley fight, where the odds were so crazy, and it's like almost $5 for Charles Oliveira to win here in Australia. It's pretty wild for a guy that's been in there for so long, former champion, and also does have a few pathways to potentially catch Ilia Topuria if he makes mistakes, right?
Yeah, I mean, Charles Oliveira is a phenomenal martial artist. The problem with Oliveira, and I have this as well when I picture him, I have little highlight reels of fighters in my head. So when you say a fighter's name, I start playing a little highlight reel of them. And sometimes it's just them completely brutalizing people. Like with Khabib, I never see Khabib on the back foot in my head. Mm-hmm. Whereas Charles Oliveira, I see him getting dropped and doing awkward things on the ground where his head's in bad positions to get punched, and him slumping against the fence with his injured shoulder. These are pieces that I've got in my mind's highlight reel that builds the character. And so what that does is it creates a scenario where I can visualize Ilia Topuria cracking him with a big shot and dropping him, and then being smart enough not to follow him to the floor. Post on the back of his head and just keep hitting him until the referee jumps in and stops him. And that, to me, is the most likely scenario. But at the same time, Charles Oliveira is big for the weight class, which can sometimes work in his favor if he's in the right position, can sometimes work against him because he has to cut really hard and suffer to make the weight, which is something that Tapuria is not going to have to do nearly as much at this weight class. So that makes me excited. I think he's probably got more horsepower and a bit better conditioning at this weight, even though he's a little bit heavier. But at the same time, Tapuria's got a very focused approach in a lot of his fights. He can get a little bit reckless, but we've seen a lot of that recklessness kind of work its way out of his career in his more recent run. And that's, I feel, where he gets the advantage over Charles Oliveira, because Oliveira is a risk taker. He'll jump into range and walk straight onto a punch, and that's the kind of thing where you just pay against Tapuria because he's too calculated. And this is a big move for him, which means that he's going to be even more calculated. He's going to be thinking about this approach over and over again. And the only downside will be as if he underestimated Charles Oliveira, but I don't think he's that. I don't think he's not that person. Of course, Oliveira's got the skills to win, but it's the recklessness way in which he fights that concerns me in this one.
It's interesting though, right? Because against Michael Chandler, he was almost like a little bit more strategic, a little bit less crazy. I want to bring this up with you, Dan, the height and reach difference. Obviously, Oliveira 5'10", Ilia Topuria 5'7". We've got a bit of an inch reach change there as well. Oliveira with a few inches on his reach. 74 inches versus 69 for Tapuria. I don't anticipate that plays too much into the fight because Tapuria does kind of like to fight taller people. He likes to work his way into the pocket. But do you think that when it comes to kicks, when it comes to being able to keep him on the outside, maybe Charles Oliveira has an opportunity to sort of stop Ilia Topuria from getting his distance by utilizing some kicks and sort of neutralizing him a little bit longer in this fight because of the reach and the height advantage here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if he chooses to fight correctly, then, what he would do, because you've got to remember, Charles Oliveira stands quite tall anyway. So his weight's on his back foot, which makes it more difficult to kick his lead leg with any kind of value, unless you've got to really catch him right when he's put his weight on it. And it also makes his lead front kick available, which can be problematic for Tapuria trying to cover that distance. Yeah, I mean, the other advantage that I see with that height and reach is if Charles Oliveira is able to get over Ilia Topuria, kind of bear over him, wrap his neck up, Darce chokes, anacondas. That's where the additional couple of inches in reach is going to make a big difference. It's something that we don't really talk about too much. But I mean, of course, the reach is from fingertip to fingertip, so it's taking into account the broadness of the shoulders as well. And all of these things are advantages for Oliveira, the way that he attacks and bears over people, neck attacks and anacondas, etc. Like they're problems that Ilia Topuria could potentially face, especially if he wants to clinch. You know, he's going to be 3 inches lower. He's going to be trying to get head position, but then, you know, Oliveira doesn't mind breaking his posture and attacking his neck, jumping guard. So there are other things to be concerned about as well with the height and reach for Topuria. But I do think he makes up for it in the striking range with his footwork and with his commitment as well to his punches. You know, he tends to cover a lot of distance because he when he throws, he means it.
It's interesting. I was talking to Benil Dariush about this, and he told me that he believes one of the successes for Tapuria is actually his kicking game. And that because Charles Oliveira has such a good kicking game himself, he's defensive when it comes to blocking kicks, and he's good with throwing his own kicks. That may be a difference maker for Charles Oliveira in this one. Do you anticipate Oliveira looking at the blueprint that is Ilia Topuria and being like, all right, like I have these weapons here that can maybe neutralize him a little bit longer in his kicking game?
Yeah, I mean, I think more than anything, it's for me, it's less about his kicking game, more about the direction of his attack. Like if he's coming around the sides, if he's throwing low kicks or body kicks, then, or I mean, even hooks, he's going to open himself up for Topuria getting close to him and hitting him with harder punches. The smart thing to do would be to like fill that center channel with sharp and nasty things, whether it's elbows or straight punches or knees, or even better, keep him right on the outside and hit him with a front kick. You know, I mean, you know, what's the danger in throwing a front kick if you Charles Oliveira? Topuria might catch your kick and try and take you down, you know. I mean, think back to what happened with the Kevin Lee fight. Was that not a front kick to a guillotine, if I remember correctly? Like, you know what I mean? There's no risk in Charles Oliveira throwing a lot of kicks. I just think that if he starts throwing them to the body, like turning kicks, he's going to open himself up for counter punches, most importantly. But second of all, he's, you know, if he gets taken down, he's just, you know, he's not set up in a good position to start working. I would much rather, if I was him, working those straight kicks to the body and try and maintain some space to really make Topuria work hard to get inside.
I wonder as well, Dan, like if a part of Charles Oliveira's game plan is like, look, I'll give him the dominant position on top of me and my guard, and I'll work from there. Because Tapuria, it's interesting. Like we know he's a great grappler, right? We know he's really, really skilled, but we have seen people make little mistakes against Charles Oliveira in transitions on the ground. Like, do you see a scenario where maybe Ilia Topuria gets a little bit too comfortable, maybe even in Charles Oliveira's guard, or even maybe as they transition up or down from the fence, where Charles can sort of try and snatch his back and capitalize with a back choke or a back control even? We've seen him just kind of backpack people, right? And people can't get him off.
I can certainly see a point where Topuria gets... where he gets sick of dropping Charles Oliveira but not being able to put him away entirely. Like, I mean, think about this as a scenario, right? So the first round starts, Topuria comes out and he cracks Oliveira with one big shot and drops him. Oliveira sits to his butt and then kind of welcomes him to the floor, and Topuria's like, no, I'm not playing this game. Back to your feet. And then he could drop him once, twice more, but not feel confident to rush in and try and TKO finish. Like, it might be the second, third, fourth time that he drops him. He's like, right, I'm going to have to just go and finish the job and get the referee to stop it, because this is not going to be a walk-off knockout. He's too tough. And then he rushes in. He starts landing some big shots. And in the scramble, you can see Oliveira arm dragging him or invert him for an ankle lock, you know, entangling him with some kind of calf slicer that then allows him to climb to his back. I mean, I could give you a few different scenarios like that, but it would be that kind of circumstance, I think, where Topuria's dropped him and then, you know, chases it up on the ground. And I think that would come out of frustration of not being able to get the finish on the feet.
I want to get your thoughts on something, man, because obviously I haven't really been a part of this game. I haven't really had too many cuts myself or been around people with cuts. I was talking with Brian Campbell a little bit about this. I saw a recent interview with Ilia Topuria. This is from a couple of days ago, over his eye. There's a noticeable sort of stitch up in this area here. From your perspective as a fighter that's dealt with cuts, that's been around the gym going into fights, is that a problem at all, having a fresh cut over this area that just recently got stitched up? Like, if you're Charles Oliveira, this is a great spot to open up on Ilia Topuria. That's going to impact his vision surely throughout the fight. But what I don't understand is, how long do cuts like that take to heal up? Like, is that good now, or is that a situation where that could still be a problem for Tapuria if Charles can land the right shots this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, if Charles can land on it, even if he glances it with an elbow, he could definitely open it up again. I've actually been very fortunate with cuts. I've got skin like a rhino. I think I had one cut in my UFC debut, and that was actually the inside of the glove against Akihiro Gono.
Oh,
Kind of
wow.
caught me, and I felt it like open up, and your face goes kind of warm. And I had it stitched right after the fight. I had 3 stitches put in it, and then probably 4 weeks later, I was grappling with Eddie Bravo, and the seam of his gi opened it back up again.
What?
So that gives you kind of some perspective. If the stitching's done well, then it should heal within a couple of weeks. I mean, I still wouldn't like to take punches on it, but it certainly won't open up, it won't open up if it's brushed against with an arm, say, for example. But it's going to be, brittle skin for a little while. That to me looks like a clash of heads. And this is often why MMA fighters wear headgear and when they're using little gloves, is because most of the time, especially when you've got Southpaw v Orthodox, there tends to be a bit more of a clash of heads. And unfortunately, that area just there tends to be quite susceptible to that because of the angle that you meet the other person's head. I mean, it looks like they've done a really, really good job with stitching. It looks like he's had 3 stitches and they've tucked it together really nicely, and it's healed well. But it also looks like the stitches are still in it, which means it's probably been a week old. So we'll see. I mean, I wouldn't like to take punches on it, and it's not in a good spot because if it opens up and starts to really bleed, then it is a position where the referee can stop it, especially the doctor, should I say, especially if it goes across the eyelid. I mean, cuts are all about vision. That's the best thing to remember. If you're a fan, you're watching the fights for the first time, and if you're trying to judge whether a cut is going to affect a fight, anywhere around the eyes, above the eyes where it's going to run down is problematic. And that's really the main focus. If you can have bad cuts underneath your eyes, and as long as the blood's running away, it's, a mere...
All right, guys, before I get back to the interview, I just want to thank my sponsor, Manscaped, for making this program possible. Did you guys know with the code word submission, you guys could save 15% off? That's 15% off plus free shipping from all of the great products on the Manscaped website. But I want to talk to you guys about the Chairman Pro. The Chairman Pro is a high-tech, data-approved grooming upgrade, which is perfect for the Father's Day over there in America. But if it's not Father's Day, it is an electric face shaver that can tackle up to 5 days of growth and features 2 interchangeable blade heads. It's waterproof. The battery life is awesome, up to 75 minutes of runtime on a single charge, but it also showcases the battery level so you know when it's time to recharge with a display. Of course, it's got the travel lock, the LED spotlight, and most importantly, the 2-year warranty the Manscaped comes with. Manscaped, of course, has the Lawnmower 5.0, the Beard Hedger, and all sorts of other products. Some of the most comfortable underwear out there as well. So go to manscaped.com, use the code word submission, get 15% off and free shipping today. And guys, I also want to talk to you about our friends at Saily. That's right, Saily, the best eSIM on the market today. What is an eSIM? Let's say you're traveling, you need to make phone calls, you need to download data, you need to be able to use your phone. Don't line up in a stupid queue and replace your SIM card, lose your current SIM card, and sign up to some plan that lasts for months. Use Saily today. You just have to download the app. You just choose the location where you're at. You choose the amount of data that you want, and you are sorted, my friend, to use your phone wherever you go, whatever country you go to. It's easy to use. Like I said, all you need to do is just download the app. You avoid roaming costs, never ran out of data because you're able to update it and increase it wherever you go. It's one eSIM for all of your trips, so you don't have to change SIMs everywhere you go. And it's got global and regional plans as well. Get up to 100 gigabytes of data or as little as 1 gigabyte of data for a week or half a year. Saily is your place to go for everybody out there who's looking for an eSIM. So download the Saily app now and use the code submission. Go to saily.com/submission. The link is in the description below, and you guys get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. That's 15% off your first purchase. Try Saily today. And now back to the program.
Flesh wound, as they would say in Monty Python.
Yeah, and of course, for a guy that's trying to get his distance, that has to get his footwork in the distance for his punches because he throws heaters. Blood in the eye, that could impact that as well. Hey, just quickly, last one on Ilia Tapuria, and we'll get to PFL. I want to get your thoughts on this. You're obviously a contender in the welterweight division. You've been there with the best of the best, from the GSPs to everybody else. What do you make of Ilia Tapuria already saying to the media that he's ready to move up to 170? Have a look at this.
Islam becomes the welterweight world champion, for sure I'm gonna push for that shot also, and I will move to the welterweight division.
I mean, Dad, this guy has just left the featherweight division, and now he's fighting for the lightweight belt. Are we already in the situation that when he wins, he's going to go from that division to welterweight? Makes some sense for me here, man. You were in welterweight yourself. The guy's 5'7". Obviously, he's a great fighter, but are we clutching in straws here? Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, I love his determination, but yeah, the guys at welterweight get considerably bigger. You know, I mean, we had some big welterweights back in my day, but you know, some of these guys I walk around now, I see them and I'm like, how are these guys even making welterweight? And you know, it's the same things we were talking about earlier with Pereira moving up to heavyweight. Like, he may have the frame to be able to put weight on to be a heavyweight in weight sensors, but the size of him is different. And welterweight's a step too far for sure.
If he does fight Islam at welterweight, I think that's a different fight to if he fought Islam at lightweight. Like, lightweight, Islam's got to cut that weight, so he's more diminished. Welterweight, no cut, not as much cutting for Islam. Like, that's a different fight at welterweight for Ilia Tapuria, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the other thing as well is, same thing as I said with Pereira. Topuria made 145 recently. Makhachev has not made 145 in many, many years. He's right at the top end of the lightweight division. And as soon as he allows himself to switch over to welterweight and grow into that weight class, his body's gonna grow very, very quickly. It's a weird thing when you're fighting regular and you're keeping your weight down. I remember pretty much up to when I signed my UFC contract, I was fighting so regularly that my weight was never really getting above, 180 pounds. I would kind of hang around a 178, around there, unless I'd really, kind of eaten way too much. But then because I had a gap, I allowed my body to kind of rest a little bit. And then it was almost like it was relieved to be able to grow because it had been holding back. And I don't think Makhachev is going to be able to make lightweight again once he's allowed himself to move up to welterweight. I think he's going to be a big, powerful welterweight. And, I think he's got the frame to grow into the weight class. Topuria might be 12 months behind Makhachev. He should have moved up a bit earlier, unfortunately. And I think he's always going to be chasing him and a little bit too small right now.
Let's just say, because I know you told me that you see a scenario where JDM beats Islam Makhachev in this next fight. Let's say it's JDM versus Topuria. What an interesting matchup, right? Two just like sharpshooters going at each other. But again, when I think about that fight, man, JDM is so big compared to Ilia Tapuria, and he has great boxing himself, really good looks. How would you see a JDM Tapuria fight, for example, happen if Tapuria keeps pushing on this welterweight thing and just insists on moving up and the UFC gives in to it?
I mean, honestly, if I'm Della Maddalena in that fight, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to give him about 4 minutes and I'm going to walk him down. I'm going to force him to throw. I'm going to force him to try and wrestle or something, and just make sure he feels how big I am by comparison. And then once I can see him start to wilt a little bit and kind of give in his footwork, then I'd start to walk him down and start sticking my jab in his face. And then it's going to be pot shots over the top and around the sides that you've got to watch out for. Della Madalena's takedown offense, I think, is too much for him. And I think, if he needs to take one of Topuria's shots, he's going to be able to. You remember when like McGregor moved up through the weight classes, he looked feral at featherweight. It was a little bit too much of a cut, I would say. But he stayed there just long enough. And then when he moved up, he looked fantastic at lightweight. That was definitely his weight class for that time in his career. But then once he'd moved up to welterweight, even though it was only temporary, his body just didn't look the same. It didn't move the same. He didn't have the same kind of impact with his punches, and his cardio was of course, affected. All of these things are potentially being overlooked by Topuria. Let's see how he does at lightweight before a welterweight run is considered. Because, 5'7", he'll be the shortest guy in the division.